Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to the show. Council of Future Conflict, episode 472. We're talking about the confirmation hearings and Trump's domestic play. Um, I promise this has not become the Council on Trump conflict, but I mean, he has loomed very large in the news. And let's be honest, the biggest conflict I was worrying about was the anti-Trump leftists. And so I think we've dodged a big bullet there. But, Joe, that still has not gone away. We've seen the trans terror cult pop up, and there's Antifa, regular garden variety Antifa cells just waiting to be activated. So, despite the fact that Trump is now president and his people are starting to get confirmed, we are not out of the woods yet when it comes to the leftist threat here in America.
No, I would say it's probably gotten worse, if anything.
And then on top of that, we've got the transnational terror threat that is kind of, they're still out there. We had over 5,000, essentially potential foreign terrorists come across the border.
I will give some props to Biden in one area. He single-handedly undid 20 years of the global war on terror in a 4-year stint, by putting the Taliban back in power and putting Al Qaeda back in power. So,
well, I was going to say, he gave Al Qaeda a country. This is basically the Al Qaeda's first country. You can't say they're a non-state, terror now. They are a state-sponsored terror organization now. So, congratulations, Joe Biden. You'll go down to the history books. Speaking of which, Joe, I don't know if you saw this. Did you see that the HTS leader has declared himself president without any kind of, it's got to be concerning for Syrians to see what is he Iraqi, right?
No, he's a Saudi.
He's a Saudi. That's right.
Well, I mean, that's how democracy works now, right? You just declare yourself president. It's protecting our democracy. That's what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, got to protect somebody's democracy, I guess. Joe, welcome. How are you doing today? So we just kind of jumped right into it there. But how's the day treating you?
I'm doing pretty good. Things are progressing forward. We're having some meetings today about events at the camp this summer. We had a great show last night on Sons of Liberty, and getting ready to pack up and go down to North Carolina. So lots going on, lots of fun stuff. It's good times.
Yeah, I spent some time today perusing Matt's store, and it's kind of, Matt may not have every perfect thing that you want, but if it's good enough and it's there, you should buy it, because it's better to support people we know than it is to go into some random place and throw your money into the void.
Plus, there's about to be sort of a domestic version of ITAR thrown on these things. I would pick up thermals if I could right now, because they're about to get tightly restricted. So
that's a good point. Watcher, I know it's going to be hard for you to respond to me, but I just want the audience to hear what we heard before the show starts.
Well, actually, just give me a second. I'm.
It sounds a lot better, actually.
Okay. It is.
I've got one of my Yetis here that I can set up. It's just going to take me a minute to find the right cable.
Well, before the show started, it literally sounded like Watcher was talking from the other side of the room, and he was having some microphone challenges. So
it sounded like he was on Hoth.
Exactly right. Well, as cold as it is there, I'm sure it feels like he's on Hoth.
My Todd's going to freeze before I pass the first marker.
Okay.
Yeah, very good.
All right. The sad thing is I have not watched the original Star Wars trilogy since the second Disney movie came out. I just can't bear to see those characters anymore. It's so sad that that's done that to me. I just need to get over it. The original Star Wars trilogy is still golden.
You have to count it as an entirely separate thing. You can't count them as
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I sailed the high seas on the internet, Joe, and I downloaded the copy of what is a despecialized version of Star Wars, and it's basically the most faithful original version of Star Wars, going back to the 1977 release copy of Star Wars. So
now,
that was kind of
cool. You wouldn't download a car.
Rick,
you can't buy this. You can't buy this. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
No, Rick just accidentally yeeted Lance Corporal Veteran, who had a $5 Rumble rant we were about to get to. I mean, a $5 super chat.
While we get him back, please unyeet him if possible. Lance Corporal Veteran for $5 says Mike Shelby, the right thinks war is an on-off switch, while the left thinks war is like a dial to turn up and down the escalation state. So yes,
but this is not an exclusive to Mike Shelby thing. Yes, he put out a thread yesterday, but we've actually mentioned this for a long time too.
Well, and Joe, this kind of also goes back to the Chinese kind of the whole unrestricted warfare doctrine, where warfare exists in a spectrum of kind of continuum of conflict versus just the hard war or no war.
Yeah, if you think about this, we think we're not at war with China. China knows they are 100% at war with us right now.
Right. This is so it goes back to the whole Clausewitz thing, right? War is just politics by other means, and therefore politics and war are almost synonymous in the Chinese and Clausewitzian kind of paradigm. And we in the West, Joe, we have a hard time understanding that. Part of it is the whole declaration of war thing at Congress and whatnot. We're either at war or we're not. That doesn't mean we can't be fighting, but ultimately, I think we draw the line at like kinetic warfare, right? That's where most Americans have that kind of mental block.
Well, and I think that's what they need to understand is, as I keep saying, you're already in a leftist insurgency, and people say, no, I'm not. Well, you have bombings, you have attacks, you have assassinations. These are all acts of war. So
you have enemy agents who have got themselves elected to legal office. They see the occupation of these things as just basically another way to take ground. There's a reason why leftists don't listen to their constituents, because they don't care what you say. All right. Well, Watcher, you're sounding better now. How's your day treating you?
It's good. Kind of good. So the Watcher family and household and businesses are about to go through some pretty extreme changes, and I might not be managing this building anymore, which means I might not have the game store in the same place anymore, which means I might have to close it down for a few months and then reopen it in a different location. We'll have to see. Things are ridiculously busy, but we are pressing on. And the chickens get here Monday.
Sounds like you're only going to get busier once the chickens get there.
That's sort of the thought, but we are about 90% moved into the new house now, so that'll be cool. At least one stress out of the way.
Yeah, that's good, and that means you'll actually be able to broadcast from a nice warm room, I hope.
As of Monday, I will have a very, very nice, very warm in the attic of the new house.
Very good, very good. Is it one of those old school houses where you've got the walk up attic where you can kind of? Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So there's
Yeah,
actually, and just to add to like the cool old houses vibe, it's one of those really really cool old houses that was built in the 30s and 40s, where like all of the bedrooms in the attic all have really cool built-in shelving into the walls and that kind of stuff.
is it like a craftsman house?
Uh, Probably not. I will put it this way: my wife's great grandfather hand built the house with no architectural or construction experience.
What
So it's a
believe
marvel it's still standing. No, I'm just kidding.
believe it or not, I mean, they used to sell like house plans like in magazines, and like you
Yeah.
could literally just buy the plans,
Oh
and
yeah.
then anybody who's handy with some
Well,
carpentry could essentially make their house.
well, this has all the classic signs of a house that was built by a person who was A, not operating off of a plan, and B, didn't like understood the basic principles enough that he did the job well, but certainly did not fully understand all the different bits and bobs of building houses. Like for instance, the stairs to go up to the attic, incredibly narrow, incredibly steep, and are technically what you call witches' stairs because they're not even heights.
Yeah.
So my aunt bought a house in Clear Lake, Michigan, like that. Like my dad and I cannot go into the second floor without ducking because everything was narrow and people were shorter.
Yep.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, there's some of those old houses, man, are just so quaint, and the cozy, just the vibe the imperfection, kind of, is endearing. So it's, I get it. I know how it is. Well, you're lucky to have a home, my friend. You're lucky to have a home.
I completely agree. More than a home, honestly. It's funny that after all these years of telling people to grow their own food, I am now moving on to a small farm homestead. So that's
Does it have
man,
good
I'm
water
excited.
and everything?
Yeah, we have our own private well that actually the well head is in our basement.
Oh, cool.
The actually, and the wellhead has a hand pump just in case the electricity goes out.
Yeah, we're actually going to be putting out a greenhouse here because the growing season is so short. But we're gonna get into
Yeah.
growing our own food out here.
Heck yeah, brother.
Yeah, those greenhouses are pretty clutch. Like here in Korea, they do an amazing amount of farming under like greenhouses. Like strawberries, like all the kinds of fruits that you can get like in these extremely long growing seasons under greenhouses because they're artificially heating them and everything. So it's pretty interesting.
So I see a question in chat I'd like to answer before we move on. Ben F asks if I will be using illegal labor to pick my vegetables and tend my flocks. And I have to say, no, I will be using child labor for such things.
Yeah, I was going to say
There
you're
you go.
more likely to use child labor, but on your own farm, that's perfectly legal. There's a $5 Rumble rant from Pinochet up there that answers your question, Scott.
Yeah, let me. I just realized that it didn't have my Rumble chat open, so thank you for that. I'm coming. Hold on a second. Here we go. Peter says helicopter tours for $5 says. Scott, it's called Project 4677, 4K77. I don't remember a SecDev ever updating the public live from his desk after a tragedy. How long before this newfound government transparency turns into a public? Yeah, I think that was absolutely cool that he did that. We're going to talk about that later in the show, so I'll save my my ramblings on that till then. But just thoughts, just real quick, guys, on the new SecDef, going live from his desk. I thought that was pretty cool. No thoughts?
It's neat.
Right.
It's kind of weird, in my opinion. Like I'm glad he
it's
did
weird.
it, but at the same time, like I don't ever remember a Secretary of Defense ever giving a public brief on anything ever.
I don't know about that. I mean, like I remember back in the what is it, the 80s, there that was kind of a thing with what was it, Alexander Haig. He used to talk a lot, but that was Cold
Uh,
War era, right?
that's before my time. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost before my time too, because I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to that stuff when I was, you know, less than 10 years old. But yeah, you know what? Just because it's not normal doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I like the transparency. I, like you, kind of wonder how long it will last. Um, the the irony is that when Trump and well, like I said, we'll get into it later, so I'll hold off on my comments on this. All right. Anything else we need to talk about before I jump into the first odds and ends?
Yes, the lack of tactical wisdom T-shirt and book sales. Shame on you all. Go buy a book. Go buy a T-shirt.
Absolutely. The T-shirts are definitely worth it. So
I know.
and it's you're less cancelable now that we're in a more. But I don't know, Joe. Maybe they'll target you because you're rainbow ramen. Uh,
Well,
my wife
I
does
heard
that.
I heard we're gonna just get rid of income tax, and then who cares?
They're never going to let that happen. It's not up to the president. That's up to the Congress. So,
Well, I could see them reducing it, but yeah, I don't. I think Congress wants to have both the tariffs and the income tax running at the same time. If you ask me, I think that's what we'll see first and foremost. But then
I think if you got rid of the income tax, the federal government would shrink back to its constitutionally mandated size.
you'd
Or it
have
should
to,
anyway.
yeah. All right, let's jump into this first story. We were talking about Colombia the other day, Joe. Colombia outpaces oil. Cocaine outpaces oil as Colombia's most valuable export. I guess it's like 1987 all over again, Joe. Are we going to have Miami Vice making a comeback now that cocaine is king again? In a shocking development, Colombia's cocaine production for the 10th straight year soared to a new record high. Shocking that they happened under a leftist president with the support of Venezuela's Maduro regime. The UN Office for Drugs and Crime estimates this year's annual output grew 52% year over year to a startling 2,664 metric tons, the largest amount ever produced. Despite the government and the capital of Bogota with U.S. backing, I don't know how much backing the current government there is getting when it comes to counter narcotics efforts. Committing substantial resources to disrupt what is now an economically crucially illicit industry in rural Colombia, cocoa cultivation and cocaine manufacturing keeps spiraling higher. The booming cocaine trade drives heightened insecurity, corruption, which are damaging key economic sectors, notably the fiscally vital petroleum industry, with oil as Colombia's most valuable export. Joe, what do this doesn't happen in a vacuum. We're clearly the main consumers of this cocaine. And with the kind of the growing attention on the Panama Canal and the attention to the Venezuela, Colombia kind of connection, do you see more calls for us to do something a little more kinetic about the problems going on down there?
Well, there's a lot of calls for it, but I don't think people realize what all of that means, right? Um, any kinetic action taken against the drug cartels or against the plant sources in Colombia and various other places in the South, that means domestic terror attacks throughout the U.S. Tren de Aragua is not here just to make money. They're here as an instrument of state power by Venezuela and the various other forces that Maduro thinks he leads in South America. So I think that we have to be very careful and make measured responses here. I know it's the cool thing to do to say we're going to go to war against the cartels, but I don't think a lot of people understand what that means.
Well, it's kind of like, do they know what going to war means? Because that's exactly what you would be doing. You'd be going to war. And you can't win a war unless you're willing to actually commit to winning the war.
But you see, let me comment on something here. Rick says clear and present danger comes to mind. And again, I'm going to point out clear and present danger is a work of fiction. That was entirely one-sided. The Colombians in that and all the other bad guys didn't have the capability to respond kinetically within the U.S. that they do now. So that type of stuff would be very, very different.
We know what's involved in going to war. We just did it for the last 20 years. I think any kind of war against the cartel or these drug would be less like Ukraine and more like Iraq or Afghanistan. Do you think? I don't think there's an appetite for that, honestly. I think that there might be if you were to do some short-term stuff in Mexico, but ultimately, I'd like to see us empower the Mexican military to go after their own cartels versus.
And the Mexican military does not have that capability. We've seen what happens every time the Mexican military does move on the cartels. They get beaten in open battle. Take that example. It's not that much of a stretch for us to say, hey, we go in and we take out a cartel leader, that we have 2 or 3 U.S. cities descend into absolute lawlessness and war like we've seen in Mexico until we bend the knee, which is what happened in Mexico.
So what so then what's your kind of solution in a scenario like this? How would you kind of go about tackling it?
Control the borders. I can never control the source. I don't need to project my power all the way down to Colombia when I can project it just to the border and tighten that down and really control what comes in. And then I need to remove the illegal alien drug dealers that are here and send them home.
Yeah.
All of these things are directly related to one another. And most of it can be solved with domestic action as opposed to going outside of the U.S. Sure, there'll probably be some kinetic actions we have to take out there, but this whole talk of we're going to invade South America and put an end to this is just, that's folly. It's absolutely silly.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think, I think we should be involved in these countries, but I don't know that means that we invade these countries and
the
go
word
toe-to-toe.
gringo exists for a reason. They do not want U.S. involvement anywhere. They don't want any outside involvement. They want South Americans to handle South American problems. They're more likely to accept a Brazilian intervention than they are a U.S. one. But Brazil does not have the chops for it. They're not even able to handle it in their own country.
Well, so maybe sanity comes if we completely cut ourselves off from these people. Unless you can get your shit together, it's like we've got no time for you, essentially.
Yeah, if we stop giving them billions of dollars to fight drugs that they then use to irrigate and facilitate the growing of more drugs, it'd probably be better for us.
Yeah, I saw a list of government. It was like a list of 14 agencies, and one of the chief agencies, definitely one of the more pricey ones, was the DEA. I totally agree that the DEA needs to go away because ultimately we've been failing at the war on drugs ever since the 1970s. I think we've only trained our enemies essentially by going after them. Watcher.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that I think the DEA needs to go away because it's one of the most massive violations of American civil liberties that's ever existed. But potato, potato.
No.
Civil asset forfeiture. Yeah. And I'll remind everyone that when it was still called the Office of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, the DEA, one of their first actions was to give Elvis Presley a badge. So it was doomed from the beginning.
Penis helicopter tours for $5 says, Scott, wouldn't you say there's a clear delineation in the military of those who fought in GWAT and those who are currently serving as far as experience goes? Action comes from innocents being targeted. Yes, I would. That being said, most of your senior NCOs that are imparting their knowledge to their young soldiers are combat veterans. So you do have a distillation of that experience, even though it's secondhand to those young soldiers. And then if you don't think the young soldiers are sitting there like watching what's happening in Ukraine and other places like that, if there's combat footage out there, they're watching it. So they are aware of what's going on. That doesn't mean they've experienced it, but they are aware. And ultimately, a very well trained and very well led volunteer force that has not fought. I would put that up against a force that's fought but does not have those training and leadership. Just because you're experienced and you've been shot at doesn't mean that you're well trained. And in fact, sometimes you get very complacent in combat. It's happened to U.S. units plenty of times. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Anyway, so
another YouTube one. So.
Lance Corporal veteran. Yep. U.S. agents, spec ops under guise of military-led ops. Yeah, like I said, I think. I think there is a role for us down there, but they need to want us down there. You know what I mean?
That idea makes for cool movies. Doesn't really translate well in real life because not a lot of U.S. agents blend in very well there. So,
yeah, I mean, one of the things that we could do is if we decided we wanted to get very in depth in the war south of the border. We could recruit quite a large amount of Hispanic Americans to become agents to work down there. The problem with that is that takes time, and we haven't been focusing on that. So we don't have that deep bench of intel assets that si habla español.
A couple things that go here. Culturally, working for the gringos doesn't play well south of the U.S. border. And two, as much money as we pay intelligence assets, we cannot compete with the cartel in that area, right? So,
yeah, ultimately, our winning proposition over the cartel is a moral proposition, not a financial one. And so, and literally, they have to. The people in Mexico and places like that have to say we're tired of it. Kind of what you've seen in El Salvador, but then you get El Salvador, right? Which is, from a liberty mindset, it has its own challenges. So, so there you go. That's the issue. All right. Moving on. We have a little Africa action here to report. France hands over its last military base in Chad. Joe, this is pretty much the last big Toho of France in Central Africa, isn't it? Or I mean, it's not Central Africa, but the Sahel that kind of.
Sort of. Yeah, pretty much, actually, because that's their last major one.
Yeah.
They've got a few a little bit further south, but this is their last major base, yeah.
All right.
But
France
I'll point out
over
that CCE Desert is still a pretty cool camel pattern. But anyway.
I was in a department store over the weekend here in Korea, and I don't know if you've noticed, but fashion camo is definitely a thing this winter. And one of the coats was a longer kind of coat, for a woman that kind of goes, mid thigh almost to high knee. And it was that. I don't know that it was the French kind of camo pattern, but it was definitely a takeoff of it. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Steve, that is too good. Steve says
that is good. Steve's is beautiful.
That's exactly right. Oh boy. Who knew
And Scott, that phenomenon we call Gucci flage
Oh yeah,
or ghetto flage, one or the other.
Scott and his fashion trends. Well, I mean, it's a thing, right? I mean, I just sit there and lean against the wall while my wife shops. So you know,
I always
let's
laugh
see.
when you see like those random things like from the '80s where they took woodland camo and put in all kinds of crazy colors, and I always think, who ever bought those? And then you see them in some African warlord's video, the bright red woodland camo, and you're like, oh, that guy would wear it.
That guy bought them. Yeah, yeah. Well, rappers tend to buy them too. I've
Yeah,
seen
yeah.
them. If I remember correctly, the Public Enemy had their whole like dance troupe that was that's where I think that was the first place I saw that snow camo. The woodland snow camo.
Or they called it urban, which no force ever used in the history of man. But yeah,
In urban, yeah. Yeah, I think the first like pure urban camo I ever saw that I thought was somewhat effective maybe was like T-Block. But even that's kind of, it looks cool, but come on, I don't know how effective it is.
I will tell you that ATAX LE is pretty good urban camouflage, and really though the best for the urban areas the U.S. military fought in, it's ATAX AU, arid urban.
Is it kind of got some grays and some
It's grays and
tan?
browns. Yeah.
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 All right. Chad has become a key to counterterrorism force in the region and one of the last countries in which Chad maintained a large military presence. French forces have been ousted in recent years from Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso following years of fighting Islamic extremists alongside regional troops. These countries have moved closer to Moscow with Russian mercenaries deployed across the Sahel, the vast expanse below the Saharan desert. In a statement on Thursday, Chad's army announced the French military handover of the local authorities of the airbase in Chad. Chad's capital of what is it? I have no idea. Najimba? I don't know. I probably missed that one. France had already handed over its other two bases in Faya in the north and Abeki in the east of the country. In late December and early January, the French army had over 1,000 people in Chad. For the force the size of the French army, 1,000 dudes is a lot of dudes. That's significant. That's like us having 10,000 dudes somewhere, In announcing the end of the defense cooperation agreement with France last November, the Chadian government described the decision as a turning point for the country, which gained independence in 1960, and said that it would enable Chad to redefine its strategic partnerships in line with national priorities. The Chadian authorities said that in the end of the defense agreement in no way calls into question the country's historical ties, that it wants to maintain relations with France in other areas of common interest. In December, Senegal and Ivory Coast announced the departure of French troops from their country, just as Paris was devising a new strategy that would sharply reduce its permanent troop presence in Africa. So those were the last two. I was thinking, Ivory Coast might be the last foothold, but it sounds like they're leaving there too. This is a kind of end of an era, right, Joe? I mean, the French have been a mainstay in this region for a long time.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Well, France has been a mainstay of that, since like the 1600s.
Yeah.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but once all these colonial forces leave, that solves all the problems in the world and everyone can go home, right?
Well, I mean, that means the Africa problem is solved, right, Joe?
Correct. They wouldn't be destabilized if it wasn't for the colonizers. Well, go on home now.
I still like that African guy who was sitting there just completely the African guy was talking to, I think it was an African American guy, and he was basically saying they gave us, the African American guy was saying that the Western countries shouldn't have anything to do with Africa, blah blah blah, all this kind of leftist claptrap, right, colonizer bullshit, right? And the African guy was like, what are you talking about? They built our countries. They built their countries inside our countries and gave us the best stuff in the world at the time. And what did we do? We shit all over it and we fucking broke it and we can't fix it, and now it's getting worse every year in Africa, not better.
If you have any doubt as to that, just look at Zambia and Zimbabwe and understand their history and realize what happened.
Speaking of Zimbabwe, Peter, welcome, Peter. Long time no see. We can hear him rustling around somewhere, but he has yet to say hello. All right. Well, Peter, we can hear you when you finally decide to talk.
Hey, how you doing? Sorry, yeah, I'm here. I was like, the headphones issue. I don't know what.
No, that's fine. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. It's been a minute. A lot of things have happened, so that's part of the reason why I kind of had to go on a hiatus.
Yeah. You had the whole baby thing going on, and
So 609 days of being underemployed ended. I started a new job, hit the ground running. 5 weeks later, I started 3 months of paternity leave, and so I pieced out, closed my work laptop, and didn't open it up again until the day I come back. So,
wow, that's actually pretty amazing that they would. 10 years ago, that would not have been a thing.
So, without giving too much information, this is it. We have a connection to a European company, so that is why that benefit is there. And it was during the hiring process, I made it at every stage, every person I talked to, I made it abundantly clear how pregnant my wife was and that she would be due in the November timeframe. Still got hired.
Well, there you go. I mean,
so,
they knew what they were getting into.
Exactly. So they saw something within me and that's all that matters.
Well, we see something within you too. We were just talking about Chad and France pulling out of, the Sahel.
I thought you were talking about you're going to bring up the tranny thing.
No, not yet. We'll talk about that later. We've got that on deck for later. Any thoughts about Chad? In France, basically pulling out of the Sahel and Eastern or Western Africa.
I mean, it's just. It is, how can I put it? It is just allowing, nature's abhors a vacuum. So who's going to fill that vacuum? Russia/China.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the thing. So I know that the French have a very long storied history with North Africa, especially Algiers and into the West. And if they are kind of throwing their hands up and saying, hey, we're done, then they might be done. And there probably won't another group to come in to handle all the issues that are going on.
Well, Joe was just kind of bringing up the, they can't say that the colonizers are causing trouble once they leave. It's kind of like they're losing their excuses.
Well, but do they? I mean, they still do, though.
Well, all of Africa blames the colonizers.
Yes, I'm saying it is a trope that they use quite often.
Let me ask you this, and this is for the panel. Any of you guys can answer this. So the European and America kind of leave this area. China, Russia start to fill the void. Does this pacify ISIS and the other, the Boko Harams of the world, or does this basically just open it up for a war of people that we don't like to kill each other?
No, I'll remind you that Boko Haram killed a whole lot of Chinese people last year in West Africa. So, and Boko Haram fights Chinese influence and American and British in Nigeria with piracy attacks on oil platforms. And the Niger Delta is a pretty dangerous place. So, I don't think that lessens the threat from them at all.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting to. Same thing with Russia. We've recently had Russian Wagner guys getting aced by, I think they were ISIS.
Tuaregs.
Tuaregs. Thank you. Yeah. Recently in northern Niger, I think it was. So I mean, this is
Mali, but whatever.
Was it Mali? I thought it was. I thought it was Niger because it was closer to. Anyway, but the point is,
the country, not the drug.
We didn't call it Molly when I was in college. So.
They didn't.
They called it ecstasy, which is what
it was roughly the same. Yeah.
But anyway, but the point is that the Europeans leave, new people come in, the same shit's going on, right? Nothing has changed, essentially.
And that's why the company Sinogard exists. The Chinese stood it up as a security company, their own PMC, to fight piracy off of West Africa and protect their installations ashore.
What's the name of that company again, Jeff?
Sinogard.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. The basically the Chinese Wagner, right?
Yeah. Or the Chinese Blackwater.
Yeah, something like that.
I don't associate the Chinese with that at all.
I know. I'm just messing.
Well, hey, Joe, let me ask you this: how do you rate Sinogard's effectiveness?
I actually rate them above Wagner because they don't have the political baggage and they don't have the media coverage.
Yes.
So they're able to actually get some things done. They resolved that hostage-taking incident at the mine, I believe it was in Ghana or wherever, where they had the Chinese hostages. And they dealt with it by just schwacking everybody because they don't have to worry about media. Right? So they're actually pretty effective.
Well, I guess
doesn't mean they're good. It means they're effective.
I think one of the weaknesses I think Wagner had. I don't know if they're still focused on this kind of stuff, but Wagner not only was doing the security stuff, but they were also literally involved in the mineral extraction piece, and it was a kind of a integrated kind of business venture in those countries. I think the Sinogard is just providing security for Chinese companies that are coming in for the extraction.
Exactly, and on that good versus effective thing, it's not hard to be good against West African insurgents, right? They're not known for their infantry skill and prowess, so you just got to look at who the target audience is.
So it's a low bar, I reckon.
Well, I think the lesson, all you need to do is look at the executive outcomes, times in that region where they just basically walked in and took over, without a whole lot of a very small number of really trained guys were able to do quite a bit of damage.
Executive outcomes was great until Danny Archer left them. I'm glad somebody got the joke.
Sorry, I didn't.
Africa.
Well, the movie Blood Diamonds. The untold joke is that the South African colonel he works for is the leader of executive outcomes. So.
Okay.
Yeah, like basically, the idea in the movie is that he's basically an agent for executive outcomes or something along those lines.
Yeah, and selling diamonds on the market. So
gotcha. Yeah. I told my wife that I got her the bloodiest blood diamond I could find on the market.
Nice.
And it made her smile.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. That reminds me of one of my favorite bars of all time. My diamonds all come from the most horrific situations imaginable.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Let's go back to the show notes. Let's move on. So a little report on the North Korean troops that are taking part in the Ukrainian soiree. North Korean troops no longer seeing on the front line fighting Ukraine. North Korea sent its best troops to aid Russia in the war against Ukraine. I don't think they're the best troops. I think they're good troops, but I don't think they're their best. After months of suffering severe losses, they have been taken off the front line. North Korea troops joined the Russian allies in battle against Ukrainian forces have been pulled off the front lines after suffering heavy casualties. North Korean troops sent to bolster Russian forces trying to push back Ukrainian offensive inside Russia's border have not been seen at the front for about 2 weeks. The officials said after requesting anonymity to discuss sensitive military and intelligence matter, The arrival of around 11,000 North Korean troops in Russia in November caused alarm in Ukraine amongst its allies in the West, who feared their deployment signaled a significant escalation in the nearly 3-year-old war. But in just 3 months, the North Korea ranks have diminished by half, according to Ukraine's top military commander. Ukrainian troops have fought against North Koreans, have described them as fierce warriors, but disorganization in their ranks, lack of cohesion with Russian units have quickly driven up casualties. Ukrainian officials said since arriving on the battlefield, North Korean soldiers have been left to fend for themselves, advancing with few armored vehicles and rarely pausing to regroup or fall back. One of the things, and this is probably painting with a broad brushstroke, but I've seen enough video evidence to make me think it's probably not true. These North Korean troops were using literally like human wave almost attacks, where they were, just
that's
masses
the Asian
of them
way
in the
of war,
ocean.
right?
Right. Masses of them in
North
the
Korea's tactics since 1950. But I'm going to remind you that it says right in there, a Ukrainian official said.
That's
so divide the number of losses by 4, and you're probably fairly close to an accurate number.
The irony is that he says that they've gone down by half, but of the reported 11,000 that were there, the northern end of the casualties, and that's casualties, not deaths,
yes,
has been 1,000, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably not, with this kind of warfare and the tactics they were using, I would believe that they've taken at least 1,000 casualties. And that's what you would do if you took a bunch of casualties and some of your stuff is not working and you're identifying gaps in your capabilities. What would you do? You'd pull that group off the line for retraining. And
we did the same thing, rotating people through FOBs and through things.
Yeah,
and I think too that there's a couple of statements we have to get right at the beginning. North Korea did not send their very best units. Their very best units remain on the DMZ. Right.
Listen. North Korea, they're not sending their best. Okay.
Right. But I think that it's also probably likely that they're doing some rotational work. I've maintained from the beginning of this that Korea's objective here is to obtain a bloodied and battle-hardened NCO corps. And the only way I can do that is by rotating guys through. So that's entirely possible. That's all this is a refit with some other gents to get them some experience.
Yeah, I tend to agree with what you just said, Joe. The key thing is for them to get real world experience, to understand the tactics that are being effective in Ukraine and North Korea. I mean, the interesting thing is that I think there are officers that are basically watching from right behind the front lines. They're the ones that are really learning, right? And they're taking notes and they're capturing information from their Russian counterparts. They're seeing how North Korean tactics work. I think these troops, while they're not their best, they're not like they're elite units. These are probably very good first line, first echelon infantry units that are, these are guys who are fed. Elite in North Korea means fed, right? And so I think, the idea is to throw their guys in and see what happens.
North Korea has the largest special ops group in Asia, called the Light Infantry Guidance Bureau. And that's about 150K strong. They can rotate those guys through there. And they've been training others all over the world quietly. A lot of people don't know that. But they're not exactly bad at this kind of work. And I think that the mark of a good NCO is that he knows when to throw the book out. And that could be why we're seeing them get some real world experience to learn that, all the books and manuals are great, but sometimes you got to do it differently.
Yeah. So just a point of clarification, we have what's called special forces, right? And they have that too, right? They have commando type units, but what they have more so, their special operations forces, we don't call them that because that is more of a different term for what we use it for.
Mhm.
We call it special purpose forces in the U.S. military, and these are there's essentially 200,000 of these guys, right?
Mhm.
And these are units that are airborne, light infantry, maritime, and their tasks specifically with small unit infiltration raids of South Korea during the initiation of conflict. And so they're very well trained, but they're not special forces, right? I mean, they are essentially, it's kind of maybe more equivalent to, the
Like
82nd,
Is it Ranger?
maybe the Rangers. Yeah,
Yeah.
these types of forces versus, say, like a tier 1, tier 2
Yeah.
special ops guys.
Yeah.
Pete, in your background, you've probably
Yeah.
looked a little bit into the whole North Korea deal.
I have. I need to do a little bit more again because most of my focus again, GWAT was that the Middle East. I'm starting to switch my perspective or switch my my research area more to South America because I think that's an underanalyzed area. At least compared to because everything that's going on with China and Korea and China and Taiwan and Japan and all that. But
Yeah.
the North Koreans, they act almost like a beehive, right? You have a queen, which is the Kim Jong, and then everyone just acts as accordingly to what they're supposed to do per instructions from higher, and there's no deviation. Right?
Yeah, I think, well, that's one of the, so evidently there's evidence that North Korean troops at a very high rate are committing suicide when they are either wounded or kind of isolated.
But who's reporting that?
Well, of course it's the Ukrainians that are reporting it, but that doesn't surprise me. That's the kind of thing that I would expect of the North Koreans.
I guess the best way to kind of figure it out is kind of look back on what some of the Soviet troops did during World War II, during retreats and so forth, and all that kind of stuff. That would be the closest, most recent comparison that I can think of.
Well, knowing a thing or two about the Korean warrior ethos from a lifelong study of Korean martial arts, one of the aspects of Hwarang, which is a Korean warrior culture from way back, that spans both halves of the continent or of the peninsula, is never retreat or surrender in battle.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes towards committing suicide rather than being captured or whatever. So,
that's also, not only Korean, but Japan too, right? That whole ethos.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there is definitely, so one of the kind of aspects of collectivist societies, right? And all of these East Asian societies are deeply collectivist, right? And I don't mean that from the standpoint of communist, right? I mean culturally collectivist, meaning where the group is more important than the individual.
Even before communism came about,
Yeah, and this is not even proto-communism. This is cultural stuff, not, and it's all about value. Like, where does its value placed, right? And the key thing there is that in Japan, you see this whole idea of shame and things like this, and obligation. And this is where you get the whole ritual suicide. I've shamed you, so I must die type thing. And, if you watch the Korean dramas, the advisors to the king are all saying, please kill me, because, when they've disappointed the king and all this kind of stuff. The idea is that if they offer their lives, then they may be, spared. But, so there is definitely a fatalism and a lack of individuality in some of these Asian cultures that is very different than anything that the European mind is generally prepared to understand without, more kind of expanding on it. So, anyway, some interesting stuff there. I just thought the North Koreans' action in Ukraine was, bared just kind of an update. I'm not super interested in Ukraine at this point, though. Pokrovsk is getting ready to be another village around that was taken by the Russians, and so I expect any day now, basically, to see that defensive area collapse.
Yeah, there was a general who just American General UCOM. I think he said that he didn't in 2025. He didn't see Russia being able to perform any type of like major breakthroughs or in thereabouts. And I was like, is it what? Like, how can I? Like, where's that thing on Twitter where you can like used to like remind me of this app in a year or remind me of this
Right.
tweet in a year?
Right. Yeah. I want to be able to see how this aged.
Yeah.
You know, Joe, and the other thing too, and I think this has been one of the hallmarks of the Ukrainian war is just the tactics that are effective by both Russia and let's be honest, and the Ukrainians, when they've been effective, is very different than any tactics that we would use, you know, in the kind of broad sweeping maneuver warfare that the U.S.
I think that's because we wrote all of our manuals sitting in nice, comfortable offices, and they didn't survive the high hyper-intensity conflict that happened when two actual mechanized forces met on the battlefield. We judged a lot of our doctrine on the Battle of 38 Easting, right?
Yes.
We did a great job smoking third world nationals who didn't really understand their equipment very well. Very different when you're up against a first world army that knows exactly what it's doing. And that's what we're seeing in Ukraine is two high-tech armies slugging it out, having to rethink tactics and doctrine from that perspective.
And for some reason, a lot of people cannot grasp that. I do not understand why.
Well, you know, I think the thing, and this is kind of when you look at the early years of World War I, right? They essentially went into the war with the tactics of the 1870s. You know,
they were still doing cavalry charges. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and then in World War II, they started with the tactics of World War I. Yeah.
And so none of them had encountered the FPV drone or any of this other kind of stuff that we're seeing widespread. And so while I you know, Joe, you and I have been skeptical that the drone is going to be as effective in other areas as it's been in Ukraine. To ignore it, though, would be a complete, you know, abrogation of your duties as a leader. And so I have not seen a widespread response in the U.S. military to this.
I think where we're seeing the disconnect is that a lot of folks in America, when they're talking about the drone game, confuse two mechanized forces in the field with guerrilla warfare. Those are not the same animal. They're not the same creature. Drones have a much bigger impact on two mechanized forces in the field because you already have a baseline. You know roughly where the enemy is, right? You can't hide 250 tanks and armored vehicles. You can hide 12 guys moving through the woods. So I think that in the context of major armed conflict between two mechanized forces, drones are a game changer and absolutely a danger you have to pay attention to. But in the context of armed civilian resistance, for whatever reason, Chinese invasion, certainly not our own government. Our own government is good and benevolent. But in resisting a Chinese invasion, the drone threat is overstated because they don't have a baseline of where to start. What
do you mean by they don't have a baseline? I'm sorry.
They don't know where to find you.
Okay.
It's a lot harder to find 8 guys camped under the pine trees than it is a giant logger of 250 armored vehicles. With mechanized forces in the field, once you find the fuel, you find the tanks.
Yeah, hiding in the Rockies or hiding in the Appalachian Mountains. Yeah, I got it.
It's and you know that's a challenge that the Russians faced in the kind of more rural sections of the Chechnya fight. You know, there was a lot of places to hide in the mountains of Chechnya.
What's the problem they're having rooting out the Ukrainian Marines from around the Kherson airport, right? They've been wreaking havoc out that way on the Russian rear area because they can't find them in the rough mountains. So,
all right.
So speaking of the drone thing, do y'all recall the drone attack beginning of 2024 that killed 3 soldiers?
So
there was a drone attack on a base on Jordan, the Jordanian Syrian border. Yeah. I still have not, even with my access to certain things, have been able to get an explanation about what happened.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Right.
You know,
And-
anytime somebody fucks something up, that's not something they want to get out.
Yeah.
That's
And-
the last thing that gets
Yeah.
released, right?
Well, well, I mean, like even digging around on like classified networks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the irony is that
That's it that I knew.
in fairness, right? In fairness, you know, it's not just a hey, I don't want to look bad in the media, but like ultimately, if we have weaknesses, we need to protect those weaknesses until we can get them very, you know, basically, you know, plug the hole. And that is a legitimate OPSEC kind of piece of like if they find a weakness, then you gotta protect that weakness. So.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, once you do plug that hole, there is an opportunity to mea culpa and basically say, "Hey, listen, we were on our ass, but we fixed it." You know, and if they haven't, and if they don't do that, then that's a problem. All right, let's move on to our last odds and ends, shall we? Joe, surprise, surprise, we're still operating in Syria.
What a shock. What a shock. Very surprising.
Though, in fairness, if somebody deserves to be dead, you know, I'm not opposed to making him dead, though I would just rather pay the Israelis to do it for us and pull our troops out. But hey, that's just me. The U.S. military says it killed senior member of Al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria. Does that mean maybe like the president of
I was going to say, are we talking about the president of Syria? Because he's the leader.
of the Al-Qaeda affiliate. That's right. Let's see. The airstrike, part of an ongoing effort to disrupt and degrade terrorist groups in the region, resulted in the death of Mohammed Salah al-Zabir of the Huras al-Din group. That is one I'm not aware of. The U.S. Central Command said in a statement.
I guarantee you, if you dig around, you'll find that is actually some sort of a translation of HTS. And the U.S. military simply did everything possible to not say the words HTS.
Yeah, I'm actually looking them up right now. Who is the? All right, let's see. The Huras al-Din group, known as Tanzim Huras al-Din, the Guardians of the Regional Organization, is a Salafi jihadist group that operates in Syria, primarily in the Idlib process. Sounds like a franchise of ATS to me. Here are some of the key points. Yeah. So basically, yeah, they're just a kind of farm team for HTS. And basically, they broke away from they were formed by Al Qaeda loyalists who opposed the decision of the Nusra Front to break away from Al Qaeda and merge with other groups to form HTS. So they were a holdout, right? They were legitimately an Al Qaeda holdout. And let's be honest, the only difference between HTS and Al Qaeda is a leadership. These are people who just disagree on who should be the leader. And so they're the exact same. They just have different leaders. So don't ever let anybody tell you that, HTS isn't Al Qaeda. Well, yeah, it's because all of Al Qaeda became HTS because they disagreed with the leadership. Yeah. And so anyway, it's a regional group. And like I said, I have no problem with, going after terrorists, no matter where they should be. But ultimately, I think I don't think that it should be us in country going after folks.
All the time.
Joe, is this a valid use of U.S. forces, you think?
I think that this is just Donald Trump putting his mark and his stamp on things, saying that all is not well in Syria without coming out and saying so. I think this is a beginning of the new Department of Defense. Hopefully, it actually leads to some lasting effect in that area. And by lasting effect, I mean us leaving and us literally destroying those people. But, hey, what do I know?
Pinochet's helicopter tours for $5 says the vid where the drone chases an unarmed soldier before liquidating him. There's been many of these actually, so this is not just a. And I anyway, so let me read the. Let's see. Before liquidating him, how has our military and tactics adapted? ? Would be nice for veterans to get an update on SOPs, even a block for Joe of NCs and training. So I want to turn this over to Joe, but the thing that I'm going to remind people is when you look at all of these drone footages on personnel, invariably they are either A, near vehicles, B, they are in the open, or C, they're near fortifications. All of these things enhance your signature.
Yes.
They make it very easy to find. So we talk a lot about this in the classes. The pine tree is your friend. It gives off heat that will hide your thermal signature. And overhead cover is your friend. None of these guys are ever under overhead cover when you see them getting targeted. So have it. The new publicly available version of Marine Rifle Squad Manual, you can find it with a quick Google search, has a whole chapter on counter UAS. And I believe there's a joint services counter UAS manual.
Yep. They're rolling out the training right now. I've been doing it for the last couple of years. Yep.
Yeah, and so there is knowledge out there that's being disseminated, but here's the thing that it's at the leadership is where I just don't see a wide focus on this. I was actually talking to somebody recently who's a military UAS expert, and he's like, most people when they think of drones, they still think of the GWAT style,
Reaper or something like that.
Yeah, Reapers, and which are very capable platforms, but it's just a different type of platform than these, kind of short-term agile quadcopters that can, the problem, Joe, the problem is if they find your signature, whether, then they can get in and get you. The problem is it's really hard to find the signatures of those individual men, those 12 men or whatever, especially if they're doing signature mitigation stuff. Yeah. Fires, things like this.
So let me have a little story about that. The forward colonel who is in charge of, it's like the branch manager for MI and is the head guy in my unit, still talks about and still frames everything that we do within GUI terms. And he is trying to pass along like these documentations to the younger analysts and officers all about how to do analytics in a coin environment. And it's going to get people killed.
Yeah, because they're focusing on the way we fought yesterday's war, and it's completely different.
And someone like him and me, we're leaving. We were transitioning out of the military, right? So the war that we fought is not going to be the war that the people coming up behind us will. So for some reason, people don't understand that.
I think that the new Marine Corps structure also has one drone operator per platoon now, too.
Yeah, I know. I'm actually.
Brings that up. Yeah.
I'm actually trying to figure out like the whole Army 2030, 2040, the changing of divisions and all that kind of stuff. I'm trying to see if I have that. It gives you an idea.
Like too that the drone game has changed it so much that every police department in America now has at least one drone operator per shift whose patrol car has a trunk full of drones that they can throw up for whatever. So
let me say this:
my trunk full of drones.
Say what?
Would you say, Watcher?
Oh, no, I was joking. I just said, me, my trunk full of drones.
Let's just say that drones where I work are are used quite a bit in order to get status updates on construction. And these things are the size of like a mouse pad, and they are quiet. They are anything, and they're actually going to give me a little lesson on how to use them. So it's going to be great.
Yeah, these today's drones are a little different than even the ones from 10 and 5 years ago. The DJI drones are just the cheapest thing out there.
Let me tell you that as a Marine, Marines have always been close to their shotguns, mainly because we do a lot of security work for the Navy and State Department. But the one great thing about drones, it has brought back the combat shotgun, and I think that's an amazing thing.
I actually wrote a paper for ILE talking about how we need to return back to the flèche. To use it, like create something that can shoot like all the small little arrows in order to take down the UASs.
Yeah, Joe, doesn't the flechette round does it have a tighter group over a distance?
It does.
Yeah, those darts fly straighter and truer than buckshot.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was just right. I was just trying to think of something to write to the paper.
All right, let's move on. Joe,
See,
tactical-wisdom.com. What's going on?
Well, I put out an article last night on creating an active response kit in your car to handle either active violence going on or getting caught in some sort of a disaster or something like that. So some ideas on what to put in there and how to stage it in your car. Like, for example, if you keep a truck gun in your car, it should be in the case with the sling up so that in a hurry, all I have to do is open the case, throw the sling over my head, and move. I've got my rifle with me. So talking about how to set that stuff up, what should go in there, and having a mass casualty first aid kit available. We're seeing a lot of crazy things happen. So what goes in that and how to put it, set it up, and whatever. I think the biggest lesson I learned from the car accident situation a couple of weeks ago was the guys had a hard time finding my first aid kit. So now I have a great big blue one with a giant medical symbol on it so you can find it very easily. Because it might not be you that runs back to your car to get something. I was busy holding down a bleed on this lady's leg and I couldn't go get it. So I was like, hey, go look in my trunk. There's this black bag. And they bought me like 3 different black bags, none of which was the first aid kit until we got to it. So,
and
anyway,
for people who are married, you need to include your spouse in that too. Like your spouse should have like a kit so that something could occur as well. And I slowly introduced my wife to that concept, and she's been very receptive as I've done it.
Absolutely. And you know what? You got to have things for other things. Like if you've got pets, you need some pet first aid items, pediatric first aid stuff.
Yes.
I recommend everybody take a pediatric or pet CPR course because it's slightly different. If you own a dog, you should know how to do CPR on your dog. But anyway, that digresses from the topic. But we've got some training courses up there. I'm getting ready to leave here in another week for, I guess 2 weeks, for NC Scouts Place, where I'm going to teach Fieldcraft on the 18th, 19th, and 20th of February. Then right from there, we roll into the Scout course, the 20th through the 23rd, and then Recce 24 to 26. So in a span of 9 days, you can get from very basic Fieldcraft all the way up through our Recce course where you're learning to conduct assaults and raids and things like that. It's going to be a great week at the G Camp. And if you stick around for another couple days, I know Hunch there's going to be a fighting Kalashnikov course on March 1st and 2nd. So over the course of 2 weeks, you can get trained up pretty well. And we're going to be having a great time down there. A lot of people coming down from the Twitter sphere will be there. So I highly recommend you guys join us. Even if you just stop by to say hello. I know Laura Cox does that. She's generally in the area. She pops in and says hello. But sign up for a training. It's time to actually get serious about it. Things are just because Donald Trump won doesn't mean everything resets to zero. There are a lot of angry people out there doing bad things. Get out there and learn some stuff.
Very good. Yep, that's well said. Joe, I this popped into my email. And that was kind of what got me thinking about, like, that kind of kit that doesn't get very far from you. Like whether it's a helmet with some nods on it, or your whatever it is, whether it's your belt. Remember, there was a pretty good little thread on X today about the belt's making a comeback. Well, the belt really never went anywhere. It was just other things were added to the kit bag, and so depending on what you're doing, the belt's always been the best choice. It's a chest rig or a plate carrier is not the best thing for when you're just kind of in a kind of a status 2 or some sort of a lower threat status, but you still want to have a certain amount of stuff, ready, and the other great thing about a belt is that you just add some suspenders and you basically have an LBE, and you can add more stuff to that belt.
I'm sorry. That my bad. I totally lost track because I was reading something radio related, and I'm a radio nerd.
No, I was just talking about I was just talking about that belt thread from X from yesterday.
Oh yeah, you know what? That was actually interesting. You and I being old school guys, we were able to kind of jump in there. A lot of people just think that, oh, it's now trendy, so now I'm going to get a belt. Hey man, you should have had a belt all along. It's really the best way to carry your gear because you might have to dump your backpack at some point and maybe even dump your chest rig. But I'm probably going to still have my belt on. And I've always been a fan of the belt kit. If you've read any of my books, you know that. I just think it's silly that guys hadn't been running a belt kit all this time.
Well,
and that's one of those GWAT things, right? We got used to riding in vehicles everywhere we go. We weren't used to having to carry our water on our body or things like that. So,
well, before the salt pack was really a thing, you had an LBE with 2 mags in the front, 2 canteens in the rear, and a butt pack, which is basically that had basically your next 24 hours worth of supply in the butt pack.
Yeah,
and that could be a pretty fucking heavy load. And then you would just add the rucksack to it, because you just doffed your ruck at the ORP or whatever. But once we started, once you started adding I think let's be honest, the newer rucksacks, you could really put a lot more shit in those than you could in the old USGI large Alice packs, right? And so,
first of all, people lining Alice in front of me. But anyway, carry on.
What's that? Oh, yeah. Well, but I think it's fine. I mean, it's it does the job. I mean, it's that being said, just the way we carried gear changed, and with the plate carriers and with the there was about 6-7 years when the chest rig over a vest was the way to go. Nobody, the only people that put stuff on their vest were the kind of the pogues, right? Like all the infantry guys wore like a chest rig over their vest, right? But that started going away once you had once you got away from the IBA, the interceptor body armor, which was a front open versus a side open. So it was it evolved, right? And there's no right and wrong answer, but there are definitely better solutions for given scenarios. And I thought that was a great thing that you brought up about and then the closing comment was kind of like, and the old school photographer hunting vet is a
oh yeah. Look, man, I still have several of them. I just can't bring myself to get rid of them, right? Just reminded me of the glory days. So.
Well, yeah, one of my favorite pictures from the Mac v. SOG era of Vietnam were these guys. There were like 3 dudes, and they had black dyed, camis on, and they had taken that vest and they sewed the sleeves and the collar onto the vest. So the vest was basically the chest of their top, and they had no shirt or a t-shirt underneath that. And so I thought that was so cool back in the day, but it's everything has its day, and sometimes the day passes, but there's nothing wrong with that old gear.
Yeah, so I'll be rocking my old school battle belt down at NC Scouts this time. I had been dropping it just because we're not out in the field long enough, but just as I guess to be a role model for the youngsters, I'm going to wear my full belt kit. I've got a pretty cool butt pack. The Eagle Industries one is like a mini Alice. It's even shaped like an Alice, and it holds a ridiculous amount of stuff. So.
Yeah, I've got my black day pack that I usually carry like everywhere I go, but that was my original assault pack back in the day. And I later I got a much bigger Blackhawk bag back when Blackhawk still made shit in America.
Yeah. Mystery Wrench is a good company.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what I
all
have
right.
here.
We could go on and on.
Yeah, we could do gear talk forever.
I know. So let's jump into Domestic Friday, of course. So it's not, I hate to say it, but for the last 3 weeks, we've been talking almost nonstop about domestic stuff. I've been searching for international topics to put in, but let's be honest, the domestic security picture is changing every week.
Well, especially post inauguration. Yeah.
Yeah, and let's be honest, right? You know, there have been some significant threats, domestic threats that we needed to talk about that had political, underpinnings to them. That being said, when you have somebody walking around and swinging a big dick like Donald Trump's been doing since he's been inaugurated, it's kind of hard not to talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
And so So this is a great opportunity for me to. So if you're here at Future Conflict and you're saying, why are they talking about what's happening in American politics today? Well, that's because I'm afraid that what is happening in American politics today is going to shape the conflict landscape for the next 4 years. So specifically, we're looking at like Tulsi Gabbard's confirmation, Kash Patel. You've got I'm sorry, what the governor's name? I blanked on her name. Joe, help me out here.
DHS. You talking about her?
Yeah. DHS.
Kristi Noem.
Yeah, Kristi Noem. Yeah. Thank you. And then of course, less not. I'd love to say not related to security, but given the COVID bullshit we went through 4 years ago, I think RFK and being at the HHS potentially could have a influence on that kind of stuff. So that's the reason why we're talking about this stuff today, folks. Not that I really want to get into it. It's just, this is going to affect all of us.
When is Tulsi's hearing?
Tulsi's hearing already started. It was yesterday, right?
Okay. Did it happen? Like, sorry, I was kind of busy, but like, did it happen in a skiff and all that kind of stuff that they were like saying? Or what?
Well, this is the public part. There should be a skiff portion.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So let's jump right into it. So Tulsi Gabbard nomination to serve as President's Director of National Intelligence hinges on questions about judgment and patriotism. So let's jump right into some of these clips. Oh, is it not going to load on me here? Or do they not have the clips embedded? I thought they had the clips embedded in this one.
I'm not seeing any clips.
Yeah, I'm going to go over to X and pull clips up there. That's really all I'm interested in. I'm not really interested in all the commentary in these articles. Let's see. Here we go. Yeah, this is the one I want to kind of lead with here. I'm dropping the link right now in the private chat. Sorry, guys, we're building an airplane flight here. I honestly thought that story had a big listing of clips. So, all right, it's in private chat. Yep, this is the one that I want to start with at least, because this deals with one of the biggest controversies is her like, oh, why are you going to Syria? You're just sucking down Russian propaganda, yada yada yada. So let's listen to this clip.
Use of chemical weapons.
Weirdly, I'm not getting audio either. Let me see what's going on.
Well, it just started. Like I don't. So maybe there's no audio at the beginning. Let's just go back.
Terrorists. This is a line that Putin used frequently.
Nope, they're talking. I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah.
Well, we can hear it.
We can hear it.
In the Syrian civil war, as he supported Assad. Syrian officials made similar comments. They did it repeatedly. They did it in public. They did it at the United Nations. In 2016, you gave an interview in which you said, and this is a quote, "The U.S. is providing direct and indirect support to terrorist groups in order to overthrow the Syrian government." And in 2019, on the Democratic presidential debate stage, you said of President Trump, this is a quote, "This current president is continuing to betray us. We were supposed to be going after al-Qaeda, but over years now, not only have we not gone after al-Qaeda, our president is supporting al-Qaeda. So I'm interested to hear, what was your goal in saying these things? And did you consider, before saying them, the motives of Iran and Russia, what their motives might have been before making these claims?
Senator, as someone who enlisted in the military specifically because of al-Qaeda's terrorist attack on 9/11 and committing myself and my life to doing what I could to defeat these terrorists, it was shocking and a betrayal to me and every person who was killed on 9/11, their families and my brothers and sisters in uniform. When, as a member of Congress, I learned about President Obama's dual programs that he had begun really to overthrow the regime of Syria, and being willing to, through the CIA's Timber Sycamore program that has now been made public, of working with and arming and equipping al-Qaeda in an effort to overthrow that regime, starting yet another regime change war in the Middle East. DoD train and equip program, again, begun under President Obama, is widely been known, looked at and studied, that ultimately resulted in over $500 million being used to train who they called moderate rebels, but were actually fighters working with and aligned with al-Qaeda on the ground in Syria, all to move forward with their regime change and not acknowledging what was obvious at the time and what has unfortunately borne true, which was that a regime change war in Syria, much like the regime change wars in Iraq, the toppling of Gaddafi and Mubarak, well, these are all dictators.
You remember before the show,
in the Islamist extremists like al-Qaeda taking power. I shed no tears for.
Remember before the show when it said, why is she wearing white? She's wearing white to make that tan stand out more. No, I'm not kidding. That's exactly why she's doing it, right? She is a queen of optics. She knows how it looks. Just like when she rolled around in the dirt and stood there with an AR in her hands, right?
Hey,
she knows how to create an image, and that's what she's doing here. And as much as I'm not a fan of that woman, tell me what she said that was not true.
Like Operation Timber Sycamore, right?
Well, you know, Joe. I mean, so like for all the people, and I am no fan of Tulsi Gabbard, right? Like I don't. It's the whole socialist titties and all this kind of meme and everything, right? But at the same time, the irony is that Donald Trump has come to trust certain people, right? And like, I don't know that I have no problem if he trusts RFK to give him advice on health stuff. I have no problem listening to RFK on health stuff. Don't listen to him on anything else, but listen to him on health stuff, because I think he's more right than what the people who have been in there for the last 20 years. And when it comes to DNI kind of things, I kind of feel that way about Tulsi. That despite the fact that she's a leftist, a moderate leftist, maybe is the best way to describe her. Ultimately, I think she's probably not that far off on, compared to John Bolton, absolutely. So I don't know. I mean, it's because she's right on this, and she goes to the same shit that I go to when it comes to Syria. So kind of hard to.
For me, it's someone who is outside the normal cabal of the IC, and it doesn't matter if it's Tulsi or whomever. She is outside. She's an outsider outside the group, and that's why they don't like her.
Yeah. I get the feeling that, she's not a Kool-Aid drinker, though she would love for you to drink her Kool-Aid.
I drink her Kool-Aid.
Oh,
stop! You know what? This is for you and all the members in chat who need it.
It's a joke. It's the whole joke about it's a joke about.
But Joe, you walked right into that one.
Go straight to horny jail.
No, Kate Upton. I told Kate Upton I would drink her bathwater. That's what it was.
Cold showers are free. Cold showers
Hey.
are free.
I got 2 kids, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, right. Well, you know, it's dad's.
I have a third soon. Got 8 soon. We'll see.
All right. Let's go back to. So this is the one thing that I kind of latched onto that I thought was really important that she brought up. That, you know, the fact that she had people like Kelly, you know, kind of flipping out, made me feel good about that. Let's see. I'm just trying to. There were a couple others. Oh yeah. This was actually a pretty good one. Let me share this one with you. Watcher. Actually, you know what? I'll just share it directly. It's probably easiest. All right, here we go.
Before I close, I want to warn the American people who are watching at home. You may hear lies and smears in this hearing that'll challenge my loyalty to and my love for our country. Those who oppose my nomination imply that I am loyal to something or someone other than God, my own conscience, and the Constitution of the United States. Accusing me of being Trump's puppet, Putin's puppet, Assad's puppet, a guru's puppet, Modi's puppet, not recognizing the absurdity of simultaneously being the puppet of 5 different puppet masters. The same tactic was used against President Trump and failed. The American people elected President Trump with a decisive victory and mandate for change. The fact is, what truly unsettles my political opponents is I refuse to be their puppet. Before I close, I want to warn the American people who are watching at home.
That's
may
the
hear
key
lies.
thing there, right? I agree with this. I think one of the reasons why the Democrats really hate her is because she refuses to just play ball for them and kind of jump when they say jump. Which is, I mean, let's be honest, that has been the deciding characteristic of Democrats for the last, I don't know, 25 years.
Well, yeah, but I want to say this about Tulsi because I feel obligated to every time I see it. She was a senator. She really liked being in charge and liked being in a position of power. And then she wasn't. And she didn't like not being in a position of power. So she changed the words that came out of her sound box. And all of a sudden, everybody loved her and she's in power again. Don't forget that. That's the lesson to be learned here. There's an argument whether she's a commie or a socialist. She supports UBI. So that there's no way that's not communist. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Despite the AR-15 she's posed with, she has supported pretty significant gun control legislation.
She is a very big gun control supporter.
You talking about Barbie Intel Barbie?
Yeah.
Okay. No, yeah, she is she almost an opportunist. Yes, I agree. But in the specific role of Intel, that is where I'm kind of focused on.
Well, here's my question, right? Is she going to completely do a rebrand as a Republican and try to essentially gain success as a Republican? Because if she does, then that's a threat to the Republican kind of, end of the sphere. Now, let's be honest, the Republican name is dog shit as far as I'm concerned.
What would she do with it, though? That's the question. Like Russia.
Well, but that's right. I don't know. I have no idea. Probably president eventually. She's going to bring her gray hair stripe to run for president. With
a Tulsi versus AOC presidency race, like a president race. Just go ahead and shoot.
Well, then that's lose-lose. Right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I mean, she could be a VP down the road for an actual MAGA style Republican and a populist. I would be okay with that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I wouldn't support that as a. I mean, if that became the ticket, then okay, I'd be voting for the head of the ticket. But just remember, the president is always one heartbeat away from the VP taking over. So. All right, moving on. We went a little long in this opening segment, so I want to get through this next one. Next one is Kash Patel. He's going to have a big influence. I know that, there's been a lot of criticism. Oh, he doesn't have a whole lot of FBI style experience. Well, the guy's an investigator. The guy has more, he has JSOC style experience. Stuff that's way harder, I think, than FBI work was the kind of the war on terror, the JSOC stuff that was going on. And he was right there in that fight. So I give him a pass. The fact that he hasn't been an FBI. I actually going into the FBI, having never been the FBI, is probably a good thing, especially considering that he knows what they've done. So I want to play a clip. Watcher, the clip from the Sean Ryan show is the second clip, I think, here. Not this one. Go down. Yeah, this one right here. Let's play this because this kind of shows you where his head was before he was thrown out there as the FBI.
Need a 24/7 declassification office, whatever you want to call it. Transparency, truth, whatever.
You guys hear that?
Yep.
Sits in the White House, reports directly to you, and you take incoming from the United States of America. I want JFK. I want the 9/11 files. I want this. I want that. All the FBI, and this is a tool, this is something we didn't cover. What the deep state uses the most to cover up their corruption is an illegal application of the classification system.
Yep.
Remember the Lovebirds text from, this is a beauty, the Lovebirds text from FBI, DOJ land, Russiagate, Strzok and Page were texting each other. Who they were running the Russiagate investigation against Trump. They were the head of the counterintelligence unit at the FBI, and they're having an extramarital affair together. Can't make this stuff up. They're sending each other texts about how much they hate Trump and are going to create an insurance policy to stop Trump. Then we finally find those text messages. You know what the FBI and DOJ do for like a year? Redact them to congressional investigators and congressional men and women running the oversight of their agency. That's just one example. But it gets even better. Here's the deep state full circle. Just last week, do you know what Strzok and Page received from the Department of Justice?
What?
A $1.5 million payout to settle a lawsuit that Strzok and Page brought for the improper disclosure of their personal text messages on FBI phones. And the DOJ just rewarded them. They broke the law. They broke the chain of command. They broke every regulation there is in the FBI. They weaponized the system of justice against a political target they hated. We found those text messages, and we got them declassified finally in full when I became Deputy Director of National Intelligence. And the world has now seen them, and they can read them. And that's the best form of transparency. That's why I want this 24/7 declassification office. Don't have me regurgitate it to you. Read it. Get the documents, get the files, get the memos. But the deep state came full circle and gave these guys a payday for rigging a presidential election and breaking the law.
And that's exactly what it was, right? It's not a payout for violating their rights. It was, here's your reward. And I'll be honest, I don't think this regulation has changed at all. An extramarital affair will immediately yank your security clearance because you are then vulnerable to compromise.
Correct.
The whole thing is absolutely silly. And he's right there. The bad thing about Kash Patel is he allows them to continue to use that stupid official photo where his eyes are all bugged out.
Yeah.
But the media loves that photo because it makes him look like a crazy man. You didn't see that look in that video at all. He should have that photo yanked.
The sad thing, Joe, is that we listened to what we just heard and we agree that this guy is the right guy to do this because his head is in the right space, right? He sees the problem the correct way, I think. So to me, that makes him the right guy. The problem is that the Democrats see that, and that's what makes them think he's a crazy person, is because they're like, how could anybody ever even look at the world this way? There's got to be something wrong with this guy. And that just shows you the depth of how broken the Democrats are. I'm sorry, Watcher, go ahead.
I just have to say that I was always a little bit like, I don't know this guy. I don't know his background. I don't know anything about him. So I make a judgment call about him. Right up until I saw the contents of this next clip. And then I officially joined the fan club, bought the sweatshirt. I'm wearing it now.
Yeah, this is
are you ready for the next clip?
Yeah, go ahead.
I've asked this Congress to investigate where has this money gone. The American people are owed that answer because it's our money. It's our taxpayer dollars.
And there's a lot of really good reason to be concerned because, the Ukraine was known as a, place of corruption, a place for money laundering.
Yeah. It's not like we sent $1 billion, as if that was even a small number to begin with, right? We've sent 100 times that to one country. I don't know how this Congress is allowed to get away with it. And Zelensky is out there. He went on the world stage and said, Russia fired a rocket into Poland, which would literally be an act of war. Well, it turned out that Russia fired no such rocket. It turned out that the rocket came from the Ukraine and was fired into Poland.
And it was a mistake, basically.
If Zelensky's going to go out there and beg the world for more money and come to the U.S. and sit in the well of our Congress and say, we want more money, and then call and demand the new Speaker of the House provide more and more money, and call Mitch McConnell and say, we need more and more machinery. He needs to be more prepared about global statements that bring us to the precipice of war than doing what he did last fall with this missile attack, or this missile launch, I should say. And we just can't have full faith and trust by giving a leader $100 billion and having him say, I'm not telling you where the money went.
Yep, 100%. Yeah. Once again, this shows to his head. I mean, so I became aware of him, I guess, not too long after Biden took over, because he was, oddly enough, I saw him on Timcast, right? And, I was kind of like, oh, well, who is this guy? He's some guy who worked in the Pentagon or something like that as a, third functionary from, whatever. And as soon as he started talking, I knew he knew he knew his shit. And so, yeah, this is. I've been a fan of his for a couple years now, and so I'm just glad to see that he's coming into the administration. Now they haven't voted on him yet, but ultimately we're going to see that happen. Let's see. I don't have any clips from that. Watcher, let me see if I can find a good one real quick. Yeah. Talking about okay. This is Kennedy and him bantering about the lovebirds. It's in the private chat.
You believe in the tooth fairy?
When I was a kid.
You believe Jimmy Hoffa died of natural causes?
He's also not in the end zone of Giant Stadium.
And then Mr. Strzok got fired, and next thing we know, the FBI and the Department of Justice, after he sued, gave him $1.2 million. Don't you think the American people are entitled to know the details of that?
Absolutely.
You believe in the tooth fairy?
Here's another one. This is a little more. This is Adam Schiff. Private chat. Yep, you got
it. I would just say we need to think about where we are in this moment. We have a new president. He's fired prosecutors who investigated him. He's investigating other prosecutors, or his Department of Justice is. He's fired inspector generals who might hold him accountable. And this is just the start. And as FBI director nominee, he's chosen someone whose primary qualification, in my view, is his willingness to say yes when everyone else would say no to whatever the president wanted, to say whatever he wanted, to do whatever he wanted. That's why he is sitting here. I mean, look at the people who held that job before Mr. Patel, the stature of the people that held that job, the qualifications of the people that held that job. And how can any of us think that his background, his qualifications hold a candle to the people who went before him? How did we get here where we are defending a nominee like this, who makes songs with convicts who attack law enforcement? How did we get here? And where are we going? History is littered with democracies that lost their freedoms and didn't notice it while it was happening. Let's not be one of them.
Your time's up.
This just goes to show the kind of insanity that he was up against. And so I thought that was worth. And then so the last one is Marsha Blackburn. I think we can probably call it with that one. I actually heard a clip from this one earlier, so I thought this was pretty good.
And it has led me to one thing. Why are the Democrats so afraid of you?
I don't know, Senator. You'd have to ask them.
Well, I tell you what I think, and listening to their questions and your responses, which we appreciate, they know that you're going to go in and you're going to clean up that political cabal that has been over there for years. You are going to reposition the FBI to its core mission. You stated that earlier in this hearing, and there will be no more political persecutions and no more two tiers of justice. And they have liked having two tiers of justice. They have enjoyed it, and it has helped them. They think in their political mission, they've enjoyed targeting Catholics. They've enjoyed targeting parents, but the American people have said they want no more of that. And our colleagues know you're going to clean it up. I want to talk to you about the Epstein case. I have worked on this for years, trying to get those records of who flew on Epstein's plane and who helped him build this international human trafficking, sex trafficking ring. Now, earlier, I urged then Chairman Durbin to subpoena those records, and I ended up being blocked by Senator Durbin and Christopher Wray. They stonewalled on this, and I know that breaking up these trafficking rings is important to President Trump. So will you work with me on this issue so we know who worked with Jeffrey Epstein in building these sex trafficking rings?
Absolutely, Senator. Child sex trafficking has no place in the United States of America, and I will do everything, if confirmed as FBI director, to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened in the past and how we are going.
So, yeah, I mean, this is the guy. This is the right guy. Anybody, I mean, you know, where Tulsi is one of these kind of people, you're like, well, I'm willing to take the good. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? For my money, and you guys may not agree with this, so feel free to speak your mind. But I think this guy's the real deal, and I think that ultimately we absolutely need him and the FBI. It's the only way the FBI can continue to function. And let's be honest, we all agree that by the time the Trump administration's over, there should be no FBI.
I think that one of the biggest errors we made as a people was allowing cameras into these rooms. I mean, look at her. She's wearing a scarf indoors because it looks good and it's going to look great on this TV clip that she's about to get. And what it ended up doing is, rather than actually delving into the issues and actually getting real answers, they're all trying to get a gotcha moment that looks good for re-election. Take the cameras out and let them get back to the business of actually doing what they're supposed to do. And it all began where? The Thomas hearings.
Yeah, this is right on the money.
Joe Biden. Yeah.
Joe Biden, right? He was the original innovator in all of this.
Yes.
All right. Pete, Watcher, anything on cash before we move on?
Cash money.
Yep. Let's talk about this next story, and then I'm going to skip JFK Jr. I mean, I think everybody's seen enough of him. Trump administration canceling funding to NGOs involved in illegal immigration. So, Joe, one of the things that I think has been critical that everybody's ignored, and guys like Michael Yon have done a great job in their reporting south of the border, Darien Gap, have been the use of all these NGOs, these like Catholic charities and whatnot, that have been essentially the rat lines to funnel these hostile immigrants or hostile criminal aliens into the United States through this kind of pipeline of countries, right? And so this. I was very happy when I saw this, because this is one of those things that not many people know about. Let's see. Noam said the administration has to stop all grant funding that's being abused by NGOs that are being used to facilitate illegal immigration into the U.S. Many of these NGOs have infrastructure and operations set up in Mexico on that side of the border, and are telling those illegal immigrants to come to them, and they will get them across the border. So essentially, the coyotes in a lot of these areas are NGOs funded by us. The NGOs, she said, are not just operating in the United States. They're operating outside the U.S. to help make it easier for those who want to break our laws. As Jack Phillips reports via Epoch Times, the Trump administration will freeze funding to those groups and determine whether those funds are going to cause causes aligned with the White House's policies. She said a review will be carried out, and before then, the Department of Homeland Security will not spend more to help the destruction of this country, she added. When somebody said NGO to me, I thought there was a nonprofit telling people about Jesus or spreading faith or salvation. Then I realized over the years it was being perverted into this shadow government, which is exactly right. It is literally like some sort of shadow agency.
The biggest NGO in the world is the United Nations.
People don't realize
where do they get the majority of their funding?
Yeah. We should absolutely kick them out of the U.S. The Trump administration has stepped up immigration arrests in recent days to about 1,000 to 1,200 arrests per day, according to ICE. In updates posted to social media, the daily average in the fiscal year 2024 was 311. Trump has issued an array of executive orders to crack down on illegal immigration. Trump has said the urgent action needed after millions of illegally entered during the Biden administration, while critics say Trump could hurt business and separate families. And in a way, he needs to hurt business and separate families in order to fix this. In a statement, Catholic Charities USA head called on Trump administration to reconsider the funding freeze because it has been providing vital services such as access to healthcare, housing, food, and more. Yeah, there are the rat lines of both sides of the fucking border. And we've been providing the safe houses and the food and everything that they need in order to get these people off the border and into the pipeline so that they can disappear inside our country.
You know, he's probably watching right now, so I'm going to put this out there. Watcher and I met a guy who was directly impacted by the NGO's operations here.
Correct.
And he and his staff have been literally fighting it, setting ambushes and arresting people and catching them on their property and turning them over to local law enforcement rather than the Border Patrol, because the Border Patrol would let them go. So if you are watching, let me know if you'd be willing to come on for a segment and talk about what you're doing and what impact this has had on your ranching operation. You know who you are.
Also, if you're watching, resend me the link to those videos that you wanted me to look through to edit and get some good highlight moments, because I
can do that for you, Watcher. I have those.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Very good. So anyway, I wanted to bring that to light. So I thought that was good that she's bringing some kind of sunshine on that. All right. So next topic we're going to talk about is these are various domestic plays that are kind of happening. And so the lead one here is it, and I've seen evidence since the beginning of the show that we need to there is a correction to be made to this. But that being said, all applies. Let's see. I want to see if it. Yeah. So it doesn't show it in here. So we'll talk about it beforehand. So, as you guys mostly knew right before you were going to bed last night, you might have caught this kind of trans woman. So, a man dressed up as a woman was reported as the trainee helicopter pilot involved in this.
That has been debunked.
It has been debunked. The person has since come up on their Facebook page and said, in fact, I am not the person. And then other sources have contacted various members of the media to say, yes, that was not the case. So that being said, this kind of goes back to, I always thought there's three kind of things, the craziest being number three, but the first two, incompetent pilot, or just one of those kind of situations that nobody was, no one single thing was at fault for this. I'm sure we will. Hold on. Let me finish my thought, and then I'll turn it over to you, Watcher. Ultimately, there will be an investigation. Ultimately, we will find out generally what happened, but this is just one of those kind of things where unless we have some really, really strong evidence one way or the other, this is kind of gets to that 48-hour rule, right? When people start,
we have a 48-hour rule. Yeah.
When people start diving into these things without a whole lot of confirmation, that's when you get into dangerous territory. I'm all for kicking certain groups of people because I don't think that they are positive to the American culture. That being said, I'm not going to blame somebody who's not, at fault for something. So that being said, there has been some that we'll get into now, the part of the story. But first, Watcher, what were you going to say?
Well, yeah, I was going to say that the second Trump said that this was related to, or potentially related to DEI, everybody jumped to, the pilot must have been trans, or the other pilot must have been a woman. It's funny that nobody seems to have remembered that big scandal that came out where it turned out that the FAA was seeking people with severe mental and physical disabilities that would make them incapable of becoming an ATC agent in order to run ATC. And I'm almost positive.
And they reduced the testing guidelines.
Correct.
Yeah.
So this was way less about the pilot and a lot more about the ground control.
Yeah, good point.
Well, the other point, too, is we have to remember it's a national capital region. So there are a lot of helicopters in the air all the time doing all kinds of things. It does get jumbled, but it's never supposed to get this jumbled, right?
Right. Yeah. And so ultimately, and Mike Lee, I think it was Mike Lee brought this up. He brought up the point, like, well, look at the technology that they're using, right? And ATC is essentially running off of 80s era technology.
I'll say it is the best 1985 had to offer.
Right. Well, the irony is that, they're so worried about introducing some sort of potential fault or something into the system that they have basically frozen the system.
And when is a good time in the United States to take the whole system down for maintenance? Never, right?
Well, the irony is, Joe, is that when you basically freeze an entire system, you lose the ability to do incremental updates here and there, right? Now you literally can't update one area without updating the other. Now,
Right.
I'm sure that there is technological solutions around that. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump's buddy Elon doesn't get a call to be like, hey, Elon, how do we fix air traffic control? I mean, honestly, that is an engineer. That would actually be in Elon's.
His answer will be Neuralink.
Well, I don't know what his answer would be, but at least that's an engineering question.
If y'all think AI is the answer, you will see way more people dead with AI running air traffic control than anything else. So it is not the answer.
Well,
yeah, AI is not the answer, but there might be a room for it. Go ahead, Watcher.
I see people saying, and I don't know if they're joking or not, that like, I'm no expert, but I stayed in a Holiday Express Inn last night, and then it must have been the air traffic controller. Well, here's the deal, guys. Like, I'm sorry, but as a person who's actually worked on air traffic control equipment and has, gone to school with the guys who go to become military air traffic controllers, I can tell you that, in fact, if aircraft were close enough and in trajectory enough that they were capable of running into each other, then yes, it was, in fact, the air traffic controller's fault. That's the entire point of that role.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember too that a lot of people have a wrong conception of how air traffic control works. There's not radar actually painting the sky. It's literally going off of radio signals transmitted
from the plane. Yeah,
from the plane or helicopter. Yeah. And the simple flipping of a switch or the shorting of a switch without your knowledge can blink you right off the screen and put everyone in danger. So
yeah. All right. Let me catch up on some super chats here real quick. Let's see. We've got that one. Peter says helicopter tours for $5. Do you think Trump's plan is actual radical transparency? They are literally exposing everything, warts and all, in an attempt to rile the public to demand a scorched earth campaign against the corrupt. So as a former public affairs officer, my thoughts on this are that you go ugly early, right? You put as much out there as possible, but you only put out things that are confirmed and verified. So you're actually presenting facts. You don't hold off. Now, that being said, you may give an initial report and say, hey, it appears to be this, but at this time, you basically say, we don't know. We are conducting an investigation. When we have solid updates, we will give them to you. And then when you come back with an update, 48 hours later or whatever, you actually have facts, right? If you do that, then that's radical transparency. The problem is oftentimes, they just want to get something out there. And I don't know if that's what Trump's doing or not, but ultimately I'm in favor of it until I'm not. How about that? Peter says helicopter tours again for $5. The FBI and IRS may be interested in the money Massachusetts governor and legislative have made under the table from NGOs like Catholic Charities and the ACLU. My MA government is all guilty of it. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of corruption built into that system. It's essentially a money laundering operation to the left. It's a way.
$10 rubble rants over there.
Yeah, I'm getting down to them. I'm trying to go in order. Phil Coggins for $10 said that approach never should have been approved with that helicopter there. It would only have allowed 200-foot clearance if everything went right. Yeah, so my understanding is that glide path right about where it hit is supposed to be around 400 feet, and the helicopter could go no higher than 200 feet. So I don't know. I'm not an expert on that shit. It's just really sad.
Assumes that all the equipment on the helicopter was working, and they knew where they were. So
additionally, just a thought, and I've heard a lot of people, scream and flail and wave their arms about when people say this, but hey guys, maybe if we have this much air traffic in a single area that's vital to national security, we should consider, I don't know, maybe another airport or something.
Yeah, well, Reagan is not in the best. I understand why Reagan's there, but ultimately it might not be the best place to have an airport now. Maybe they need another large airport outside of, down in Virginia, maybe south of, Belvoir or something like that. Or not Belvoir, but is it Belvoir? Yeah, it's Belvoir. Right. Moving on. One more from Phil Collins. I'm sorry. It's not air traffic control. It's air traffic suggestions. Well played. All right. The polarized world. So Trump has, like I said, been swinging, a big bat around since he's taken over, and good, bad, or indifferent, it has affected the way other countries think about him. I am generally of the opinion, guys, that I don't give a fuck how other countries view us, but you want to get things out of other countries, so there may be advantages to having positive viewpoints in other countries, or a positive image, but here's the thing. I think this is the viewpoint of Trump, not necessarily the viewpoint of America. Polarized world, how other countries feel about the Trump presidency. As his second term begins, it's clear that voters within the U.S. have a wide spectrum of feelings about how it's going. This shouldn't be surprising because the size of the U.S. economy and its exceptional geopolitical influence, any change in policy could have big ripple effects outside of America's borders. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the American presidential election is the only election that the entire world follows. There's a little bar graph here, which I thought was interesting. Europe's concern over Trump isn't a universal opinion. This is a share of respondents who think the election of Donald Trump is a good thing for their country in percentages. So yellow is good, teal is neither or don't know, and dark blue is bad. So India, very happy with Donald Trump, at 80%, 85% or so. 5% maybe or 10% think that that's a bad thing. So that's interesting. But, Donald Trump always, during his first administration, he played that huge, he talked to that huge crowd of people. It was like over 100,000 people in that soccer stadium or a cricket stadium or something. It's pretty impressive. Saudi Arabia, it's very positive, which is kind of interesting, right? Which of these surprise you? Russia kind of surprises me, that there's not more negative.
I don't
there.
think so, because the Russians see Donald Trump as a Putin-like figure.
Yeah, like maybe
what
they
surprises me is Korea.
Yeah, see, that doesn't surprise me, but then again, I'm over here all the time.
Right.
I see the news and I see the way their politics are. The funny thing is that the conservatives in Korea are very much against the America first, kind of foreign policy, that would essentially either A, cause South Korea to pay more, or B, have U.S. troops withdrawn. Now, the irony is that is exactly, seeing U.S. troops withdrawn is exactly what the liberals or the commies in South Korea would like to see happen. So you have this weird kind of like juxtaposition of support. So,
well, I think too, when you look at where South Africa sits on that list, I think it's because they did this survey in the Cape and not on the other side of the country, because it would be much farther over by the Korea side if it was done in, say, KwaZulu-Natal or Durban.
Exactly right.
Exactly right. The other one that's kind of interesting here for me is China. Like, what almost 50% think that Trump is a good thing for them.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So 46% say he's good. 36 says it's kind of bad, and 18% in China say I don't know.
We're literally on the eve of a knockdown, drag-out trade war that has the potential to put a full stop to both their and our economies, and half of that country likes Donald Trump.
I think there's two important things here. One, they had to group all of EU together to get a meaningful result, because in the EU in general, feelings are very, very mixed. Hungary, for example, versus France.
Yeah.
So they put them all together to get the result they wanted, right?
Yeah.
You also don't see Canada on this list. There's a good reason for that. You don't see Mexico.
It's part of America.
You ask the government, and they all say he's bad. But you ask the people, and they'd be like, "He's pretty good.
Yeah.
He's all right."
You get a different response in Alberta than you would in Quebec.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I think another interesting one we haven't talked about here is definitely Great Britain. Guys, I think you have accurately established what the relationship between our governments is going to be. So, and whose fault is that, might I add?
Oh yeah, fucking Great Britain. We haven't talked about Britain in almost about a year. And
if you notice too, scroll down just a touch, and it says source. Oh, the European Council on Foreign Relations.
Foreign Relations, right.
Look, the first 4 countries listed there that are mostly pro-Trump are countries they consider, the CFR considers to be the
Exactly
bad
right.
guys.
The BRICS. Essentially, it's the BRICS. You've got. Wait a second. The BRICS literally are the first 6 countries. So I mean,
First
it's
6 countries.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And but even Turkey is, it's pretty even with Turkey.
Yeah. You can get any statistical result you want by thinking about who you want to call beforehand. The South Africa example is the easiest one. This Canada one I just mentioned, right? If you call someone who has to live their daily life in say Chihuahua, Mexico, versus somebody who lives in Mexico City, their opinions are going to be very, very different because their lives are very, very different.
Yeah, 100%. Anyway, I just thought this was interesting just to kind of see the gerrymandering of support that you see. And I'm glad you picked up on that, Joe, because that was one of the things that I kind of noticed about it too. They hide the positive. If you go, the only thing I would say is you look at EU 11, right? 22, 40, negative, and then 38. Just remember 38, people saying, I don't know. That's essentially saying, he could be good, but I don't know. He could be bad. We'll have to see. He's not my president, right? I think that's a pretty telling thing that most people are either indifferent or positive to Trump in Europe. And what they're doing is they're trying to hide countries like Poland and Hungary and Slovenia, places where he has very high levels of support, because they are countries that have generally had good results under populist or conservative leadership.
It's important whenever you're looking at any graph or stat is to consider, 1, the source, because that'll tell you what they're trying to convey, and 2, read their research methodology, right? Who they called and what that demographic was. You can totally skew the results if you want to.
Yeah. All right. The last one here is our favorite thread of the week. The fact that we're looking at this now means that we're going to be seeing more of this in the future. Of course, I've got to find an archive link now to this Bloomberg because I was able to see it earlier. Watcher, can you open that Bloomberg story?
Let me see.
I'm getting the archive link right now, so I'll share it with you as soon as I have it.
Talking about this DeepSeek one? Yeah, I've got it.
Yeah.
Already. Oh,
okay,
no, never mind. It's only for subscribers. So
I can see it here, but it's got if you look at it more than one time, then it gives you a subscribe thing. So the link is there in the chat, in the private chat. Penis Chase Helicopter Shooters for $2 says, speaking of BRICS, before you go, what are your thoughts on Trump's statement to the BRIC countries yesterday? I didn't see that.
I didn't either. I don't know what that is. So
if you have a if you have a link, drop Penis Shade, just drop it in the chat and we'll look at it. I'm sorry. All right. Anyway, I'll get to it. This Blaine just shared something funny in the CFC chat. That's pretty fucking good. All right. Pentagon workers use DeepSeek, the Chinese ChatGPT, right? And we expanded on this earlier in the week. For days before it was blocked by the DoD.
Let me just add something onto this that I'm sure it's going to say in the story, but the headline doesn't look as bad as it is unless you understand that DeepSeek contains a fucking keylogger.
Right. So essentially, anything that you do with it, it logs your keys, and then anything you do on your computer.
Anything
on your computer after you do it. Right. Now, my understanding is once it doesn't log anything, it doesn't install it on your like a keylogger on your computer after the fact. It just, as long as that window is open, it basically has a keylogger built in.
If you believe that, I've got some bad news for you.
Well,
that's not how keyloggers work, dude.
My understanding. Yeah, I just read an article about this a couple hours ago, and it basically
Who wrote the article?
said that. Huh?
Who wrote the article?
it was one of
Exactly.
these AI tech blogs. Anyway, point is the way they explained it, it's not malware getting directly downloaded onto your computer. It's essentially a keylogger that, as long as that window is open, they can see anything you're doing on your computer. But if you close the window, then it stops being able to access your computer. So,
well, if I wanted you to open up a window and not be afraid, that's exactly what I would tell you.
well, I know. My point is that that's still pretty, because most people open a window, and then they'll just minimize it, and have it as a tab in the background and come back to it. So everything that you're doing on those other tabs, it would be able to see. So that's pretty insidious, actually. All right. Anyway, let me read this. The Defense Information System Agency, DISA, which is responsible for the Pentagon's IT networks, moved to block access to the Chinese startup's website late Tuesday. The official and another person familiar with the matter said both asked not to be named because the information isn't public. The move came after defense officials raised concern that Pentagon workers were using the tool. The person said deep seeks. I'll be honest with you. I bet they don't say anything about the keylogger in here. On Wednesday, some Pentagon work screens showed sign of saying website block, citing operational reasons, but others could still access DeepSeek. According to defense officials, correspondence reviewed by Bloomberg News, a spokesperson for DISA didn't respond to requests for comment. DeepSeek and the AI model said that it was developed with less than 6 million upended markets. Because it was stolen shit, basically. It soared to the top of Apple's store downloads. If you downloaded this is probably worse than TikTok at the shit that it will give. So if you downloaded this, uninstall it and probably look at doing a fucking return to zero on your phone if you did so. The Pentagon IT experts are still determining the extent to which employees directly used DeepSeek system through a web browser. The U.S. military personnel started downloading an earlier release of DeepSeek code on their workstation. Oh, shit. In the fall of 2024, according to a person familiar with the matter. At the time, the downloads didn't raise concern with the Department of Defense security teams, as the connection to China wasn't clear to them, because Joe, this is one of the things about the military that just absolutely infuriates me is how out of touch they are with just shit that's happening, like the late developing shit, whether it's the new shit that's going on in some other country, or whether it's this, or whether it's, they're just not in the fucking loop. The explosion of interest in the latest DeepSeek release has triggered efforts in some military services to find and remove code from China origin chatbots on employees' individual machines. However, thousands of Defense Department personnel are using DeepSeek through Ask Sage, an unauthorized software program that doesn't directly connect to the Chinese servers. Yeah, I believe that. I got some land to sell you. According to the founder and chief executive officer of the platform, okay, yeah, that's what I would say too if I was connecting to Chinese servers. Military services are addressing DeepSeek by employees in different ways. The Navy on Friday prohibited any usage of DeepSeek due to potential security and ethical concerns associated with the model's origin and usage. Asked about the report, Navy spokesperson, Lieutenant Commander Lauren Chatmas, so the Navy already has guidance against using open source AI systems for official work. Recent internal Navy correspondence mentioned DeepSeek in connection with that guidance. The Air Force has no specific guidance. The Army issued guidance in 2024 warning of unique challenges in terms of data privacy, security, control over generated content. Once again, they're not kind of keying in on the shit that, we were talking about, Joe. The fact that this is literally a portal into your computer by the Chinese without downloading anything. So just because you're not downloading things doesn't mean that your system is safe.
Yeah, I mean, just because you don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, they should not be allowed to. This is why you also, for everyone else who's not in the military, need to buy something like a secure router from Kay at Combat Studies Group. It stops and filters all those background processes that you don't see happening that come from malicious software sites like this.
Yeah. So here we were talking about the key logging here. I think this was the one I read actually. Let's see. DeepSeek AI highlighted the sheer excess of data collected by the tool as it's set out in the privacy policy, hidden within its list of technical information collected as keystroke patterns or rhythms. Keystroke logging involves the tracking of every interaction you make with a button on your keyboard. When you press a key, you're speaking to your computer, telling it what function you want to perform. How it responds depends on length, time, and velocity of the key press, as well as the key's name. This is particularly a concerning piece of data to collect and can reveal practically everything you do on your computer. By signing up and agreeing to its privacy policy, you're giving DeepSeek your consent to record and store every input you make on your computer. DeepSeek also collects your IP address, email, cookies, payment information. Every interaction with a chat tool, it also assigns you a device and user ID, meaning you can be tracked across multiple devices. Combine this with a collection of keystroke patterns and sheer volume and detail. Now, let's be honest, Google does this, but I don't like it when Google does it. I sure as fuck wouldn't want the CCP to do it. Is it possible to delete this data? There is no guarantee DeepSeek will delete your data. Of course they won't. It's a fucking Chinese Communist Party. They're not going to delete your shit. Watcher, any thoughts on this?
Yes, literally every single person involved in this needs to be fired and potentially looked into. And if they have done something that has exposed our information to the Chinese, they need to be charged. Like in a story.
I'll be honest with you. I think that DeepSeek should be banned.
Of course,
in U.S. networks.
I mean,
this is way worse than TikTok, if you ask me.
Oh my God, yes. This is unspeakably bad shit. But also, unfortunately, am I surprised? No. No.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Joe, any final thoughts? Anything we didn't cover?
I'm dropping. A couple people have asked for it. Links to Kay's website. It's where I got my phone, where I got my router, and a couple of other secure device options from him. So, if you really want to secure your comms, you need to start thinking about securing your comms. Let's just say it's because of the Chinese threat. There's no other possible threats. The United States government is benevolent and kind. But you need to think about securing it from bad actors, criminal elements, all kinds of other groups out there, non-state actors. So check out some of the products that are offered that make your life easier. More importantly, check out some of his classes, because you can have the coolest and most secure phone in the world, but the minute you watch a TikTok video, you just destroyed all benefit of having said secure device, right?
Yeah.
Because secure device is only as good as your disciplines. So his ground rod courses will teach you about digital tradecraft and how to be a lot more secure. And you get to practice cool stuff. So.
All right. Pete, you still there? I'm going to take that as a no. Watcher, final thoughts?
Keep your eyes out, particularly south of the border. There's some interesting stuff going on between the cartels and some threats being made once again to start basically a hot war with the servicemen who are now stationed down there on the border. So things are looking to get interesting. I'd also say, weirdly, I've been having this weird feeling for the last little while that the Democrats are too quiet. I don't buy this whole shocked into inactivity thing. I think there's something else happening They're not in the kind of abject panic you would expect as their entire life's work gets brought down around their ears. So,
well, the irony is there's something going on that makes them think that the way they've been doing business will continue to work, which I absolutely can't see how that could ever happen. But what the fuck do I know?
Yep. So keep your eyes open, keep your head on a swivel, and don't fall for every story you hear online, like the trans pilot and stuff. Make sure that you're always digging into your sources.
Yeah. Yep, I agree with that. Pete, you back? No, you just, when you did that, it's a trick. Get an axe, Army of Darkness. Yeah. Peter says helicopter tours for $1. Said the Trump told the BRICS to shit or get off the pot on the U.S. dollar as soon as possible, though he made the statement on Truth Social.
What he said was, if they move against, I looked it up, if they move against the dollar, he'll throw tariffs on them. I think that's absolutely right. That's what he ought to do. That's the purpose of tariffs, right? You have to protect your national currency. I think it's too little, too late for the dollar. The dollar is going to fall at some point, but I think his statement is what a U.S. president should say.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, that's just it, right? The dollar is what it is. It's the currency we have for now, and ultimately, he has to do everything he can to defend it. That being said, that doesn't mean there may not be an alternative at some point in the future. So. Only time will tell. All right. That's all we've got. Pete, nothing? No, nothing from Pete. Okay. Gentlemen, I think ultimately this air incident is going to be ruled a terrible accident. I think I think the one thing that will probably happen is if anybody is actually responsible for doing something wrong in this, they will be held responsible, because that's one thing that I think the conservative side does way better than the American left, right? And that is, we actually believe in individual responsibility. And when people are identified as being in the wrong, and we want to find out I think especially early on in this administration, there's going to be a lot of eyes on this. It doesn't, Joe, I was watching questions by by a senator of Joe Biden's FAA candidate, and he was asking him all of these flight kind of related stuff, but ultimately the point was that his guy was not a pilot and had no idea about any of this aviation bullshit. So it doesn't surprise me that the ATC and all that kind of stuff are in a mess. I don't blame Donald Trump for talking about DEI when it comes to air traffic controllers, because absolutely they chose to have diversity as a criteria to become an air traffic controller, which is the wrong fucking thing to do. So that's where we're at with that. Okay. Guys, if you haven't done it already, please like the channel, subscribe to the channel, like the video, tell people you're getting good stuff here. Joe, Pete, Watcher, thank you very much, guys. Without you, couldn't make the show happen. And chat, you guys show up every time. Thank you very much. I'm humbled by your support and your just attendance. So thank you very much. We will be back on Monday. We're going to try to get away from some of this Trumpist, domestic stuff. There's a lot of stuff happening in the world, so we need to kind of swing our focus back there. So expect a mostly foreign focused show on Monday. So thank you. And as always, stay safe.